Gear 5th embracing the costume/clothing of the area is perfect for the Nika legend. As every place has their own interpretation of the god of liberation, it makes him more relatable to every species. I think that this is a perfect way to put it, because there is this question of how so many unrelated cultures each have a belief in the sun god. But if the original Nika was someone like Luffy visiting all of these cultures and incorporating their traditional clothing into the freedom fit, then it makes a lot of sense. So far, a sun god has been flagged in the cultures of giants, buccaneers, and Shandians, and I can see Nika meeting the sky people, and like Luffy now taking on the Viking horns, Nika grows a pair of wings for a nice thematic adventure. There's no sun god in fisherman culture, and I suspect that's because Joy Boy failed. If he'd succeeded, then he would have become that sun god legend for them, but he didn't, and so they have no one to worship except for the idea of the sun itself. And something I didn't think about in the last video is that Luffy here, he looks less like a giant and more like an Oni. In fact, his Gear 5th form at the moment looks pretty strikingly like Kaido with the horns and the cloak, and it makes me want to see a situation where Luffy deliberately mimics his opponent's outfits in Gear 5th, because that's just the kind of thing that Luffy does. If he sees something that looks cool, he tries it out, like how he stole Wapol's eating technique and used it on Crocodile. I wonder if they call him the sun god because he turns on and off the lamp to their terrarium. That would be amazing. If the sun god doesn't even call themselves the sun god, this is all just Lego world canon that the citizens have conjured because of a flip on and off every day. It's very Eiichiro Oda's sense of humor. However, there is some pretty blatant sun symbology happening here, with the sun being depicted on both the shield and the staff. And not only that, but this is a very familiar sun. The sun on the shield looks like it has 8 points, which is a very consistent number. That's the number of dots that the sun symbol had in Kuma's church, and also the number of flames around the sun on the alabaster flag. So we're continuing this idea that each culture has their own depiction of the same sun god, and so they also have their own variants of that same sun symbol. All different, but remarkably consistent. Someone in the comments also pointed out to me that it's not just the staggering size of the sun god giant that we should be blown away by, but also the fact that a skull is being worn as a helmet, implying the existence of unbelievably large deer as well. So what we're doing at the moment, we're starting at a more house pet sort of level, but more so than most arcs, I am really looking forward to exploring the fauna of Elbaf, because even the most mundane creatures are going to be massive and amazing, although that may not necessarily be true. Because in Big Mom's flashback, I do remember that she accidentally killed a bear on Elbaf, and the bear itself was quite normal sized, so who knows exactly how the wildlife of Elbaf function at the moment. Feels like they stumbled into some giant's D&D game. Chapter of the title was RPG. Maybe all the people in there are playing their characters. I do quite like that idea. That would definitely save this whole situation from being one of the most creepy and horrific things to have ever happened in One Piece. If all the humans in Legoland were well aware of their situation and they were functioning as glorified NPCs to guide the Straw Hats through a pre-written campaign with the Sun God acting as the DM. The only thing I'm not so sure about are the two dudes speaking amongst themselves, the guys that saw all the bees fall from the sky. Even though the Straw Hats weren't around, they were still in character, which, man, is solid commitment if they are actors. But it feels like everyone in this world believes that it's real. And the same sort of thing goes for the cat, running away terrified of the Sun God. If this was in fact an act, then it probably wouldn't be fleeing for its life. However, something that does support the game idea is that Nami found a map, and this is a bit odd because it came completely out of nowhere. They're all just riding this cat, and Nami says, "Anyway guys, look at this map." I think it's implied that she found the map while they were rescuing Chopper outside of the model world, but if it was a blueprint for use by the giant, then why is the map to human scale unless it was designed to be used as part of the RPG? I don't know, at the moment the whole map thing is a bit clunky, but I guess it tells us that we'll be spending some more time in Legoland, unless this is a scale model of Elbaf and this map goes on to be useful on the actual island. But look, I could see the next chapter opening up with something like the Sun God rolling a d20 to determine exactly what action they take to stop the Straw Hats, because there are definite game elements at play here. Game elements that the rest of our crew are sadly missing out on. I'm very much looking forward to catching up with the rest of the crew, and I certainly do hope they've been using their downtime to innovate some sweet award-winning flavor. But if not, that's fine, because the sponsor of this video, Fume, has done exactly that, which is one of these funky devices that I fidget with on my desk all day. Because it's fun, but it's more than that, it is flavorsome fun. Fume is not a vape. There is no vapor, no nicotine, no batteries, just glorious flavored air. In fact, you're breathing air right now. Don't even try to deny it. The only thing you're capable of denying yourself is flavor. No orange vanilla for you. But there could be, as well as many other flavors such as the black licorice core to provide that refined depth of experience before, during, and after your long day of watching men talk about fictional pirates on the internet. Fume have served over 300,000 customers, and you, and talking to you, could be one of them by clicking my link in the description. And for a limited time, use my code GRANDLINEREVIEW to get your free Fume topper, which is the perfect accessory for your Fume device. You slip it onto the mouthpiece for a softer, warmer feel. It's also chewable for those who love to fidget, and it's reusable. So head to tryfume.com, that's tryfum.com, and use code GRANDLINEREVIEW or scan the QR code on screen to get your free Fume topper when you order your journey pack today. And thank you so much, as always, to Fume, as it's their consistent sponsorship that allows us to bring you the best fictional pirate content possible as often as possible. So definitely try them out, but for now it's back to you. Me. I'm 80% sure that the sun god is a woman. The slim silhouette, the high heels, I'll even make a prediction. I think it's Freya. So Freya is a goddess associated with love, beauty. So Freya is a goddess associated with love, beauty, fertility, sex, war, and some funky specific magic for seeing into the future side, if you will. So that's a lot of things. But Freya is also strongly associated with cats, rabbits, and some other cool animals. And cats, rabbits, and some other cool animals are exactly what we've been seeing so far. Some of the animals even have names. The raven we saw is named Mugen, which is a combination of Odin's ravens, Hugin and Munin. I'm probably mispronouncing all of this because I am not a Norse mythology, and I apologize in advance. This is not my area. But the snake we see is named Hilmunganda, which I believe is a reference to Jormungr, the world serpent. And someone has told me that this is potentially a portmanteau with the Swedish word hel, which means shelf. So what we have is a shelf snake or a shelf world serpent. So these pets have very cutesy names, and it's kind of like having a small black cat and naming it Anubis and having it rule over your front garden. But back to Freya, she rules over this one, which is where half of all slain warriors go to rest. So our sun god could have created a peaceful society designed to be free of all of the conflict, maybe taking in refugees that end up on Elbaf, because we know that giants aren't hugely keen on housing humans after the Big Mom incident. So Freya would be giving them a place to live in peace, which is a pretty big deal in Warland. And hey, you know what? Maybe that was the fate of Eustace Kidd, a warrior who was bested in battle by his betters, recovered from the sea, and plonked in an exhibit to peacefully live out the rest of his days. But how come Zoro didn't get lost this chapter? He said he followed a loud sound to his source and found Luffy and Sanji. So Zoro's sense of direction isn't quite that bad. We've seen him follow loud noises before and actually get to the places where the noises were coming from. It's only a problem when you say something like, okay, Zoro, it's easy, just go north, or just go straight, or just go anywhere that requires him to actually think about the direction himself, rather than following a sound like a predatory instinct. That's generally Zoro's problem. He's distracted by other stimuli far too easily, like an overly active puppy, but without the trained recall. One thing I noticed is that Luffy actually has his straw hat on his back. Yes, that is very much worth pointing out. One of the big things that made me think that this may not have been Luffy was, one, the gear attack dialogue made no sense, still makes no sense, but two, he didn't have his straw hat. And in the previous chapter, we did see a shot of him from behind, and there was no hat, there was no axe, there was no sword in that shot either. But in this chapter, it looks like Oda and his assistants have gotten their act together, because we do have a shot of Luffy from behind where he has both the straw hat and the axe. I'm still not 100% sold on the mistakes being accidental. However, the evidence in this chapter certainly suggests that they were. Y'all remember those non-canon arcs the anime made back in the day? It feels somewhat like we're back on those. I agree. Ever since Nami woke up in the Lego castle, this whole thing has felt like an anime filler arc. Especially because it's such a stupid reason how we got here in the first place. The whole drinking of the green fairy on the way to Elbaf causing an unexpected and weird side adventure. And I'm not sure how the anime staff think these days, but if this were classic One Piece, then I think they'd be rubbing their hands together and seeing Lego World as an opportunity to milk an entire filler arc out of. Have Luffy, Nami, Sanji, Zoro, Usopp, and Chopper meeting the residents of Legoland, solving some mundane problems for them, maybe fighting a few more gods, and then 5 to 10 episodes later is when Luffy shatters the mirror and we get back to the canon story. How many of Usopp's lies will come true in this arc? That is a very good question, and there's one lie in particular that I'm thinking of, which is when he said that he once fought 10 giants the size of the shadows they saw near Jaya. I was actually convinced that this one was going to come true during Wano when Oda introduced the numbers, because there were 10 of them, and they were artificially created ancient giants. However, Usopp did not get to manifest that lie during the raid, but how many better opportunities could there be to fight against 10 giants than on Elbaf? life. All of Usopp's lies do eventually manifest in one way or another, so on this, we shall wait. I feel like the quote giant is not a real giant and they're just a normal sized human. I think they have the shrink fruit or something. It makes sense since there's no giant as big as them. They're bigger than oars. Yeah, the size is pretty wild, but the shrink fruit, that is a thing that actually exists and it was used by a giant twice actually, just neither time in canon. It was called the Mini no Mi, and it was first used by a giant named Blue in a very old game, One Piece Round the Land for the PlayStation 2. But this exact same devil fruit then appeared in the Zed's Ambition filler arc, the weird tie-in episodes for Film Zed, and it was used by Lily Enstermark, a giant who could use her abilities to become not a giant. This power was also able to affect any objects that Lily was holding, but it was never used on other people. So something like this definitely isn't out of the question, because we're not dealing with a normal giant here, and if we are, then we're not dealing with the normal crew sizes here. Or we are, and the art is just as weird. And Nami mentioning gigantification could be a bit of a red herring trying to obscure what's going on by planting the exact opposite concept in our heads to think about. And I have also seen it suggested that the sun god may have a giant fruit, and a giant with a giant fruit already exists as well, except in canon because that's what San Juan Wolf has, the Decadeconomy, which allows him to transform into the colossal battleship he is. I don't think it's that option though, because all of the interiors in this building are built to the scale of the sun god. So whatever's happening here, the only constant is that the sun god is their normal size. Can we please talk about Chopper is being in an awesome collar and his awesome armor? Yeah, sure thing, we can talk about that. One of the things that I really wish we got in this chapter was a clear shot of Chopper's outfit. My artist has done an amazing job, but Chopper didn't get a clear showcase panel like the rest of the crew have had so far. But for now, what I will say is that I love his horn extensions. Unlike everyone else, Chopper came into the Viking realm already equipped with horns, but the sun god saw those and thought, good start, but we can do better. Dudes, remember when early this year Oda said something about an unexpected result from a battle between two crucial characters? He did say that, and I'd actually forgotten about this, and I shouldn't have, because we are now heading to the end of the year. It's October, and we realistically have less than 10 chapters left for this year. The current estimation is that with the breaks, we will end on chapter 1136. But last year, Oda's Jump Festa message for the manga stated, and I quote, "The battle between that character and that character may lead to unexpected results." And this was said as a teaser for what was coming up in the manga this year. And these are usually pretty on point and often outright blatant spoilers, because in this message, Oda also practically confirms that we'd be going to Elbaf after Egghead Island. I mean, he referred to it in the same way that he refers to everything as, quote, that island. But that has now come true. However, the fight teaser still hasn't come to fruition. I don't think anything's happened this year that really fits that teaser. The initial speculation was that Oda was talking about Shanks and Blackbeard, or something else happening in the background, because he usually uses words like that character and that island for things that aren't present in the current arc. And at the moment, I think the only thing that might fit is Shanks versus Bartolomeo, although that was definitely a less than unexpected outcome, but there is another possibility. Sometimes what happens is that Oda overestimates his production, and he drops spoilers a bit too early, likely because he gets a bit overly ambitious in what he'll be able to accomplish for the year. So I would maybe keep this in mind for next year, because I don't know if we're going to be cutting back to grand scale events anytime soon, after just starting a new arc and having roughly 8 chapters left in the year. No idea what is going on. Last 3 chapters feel like a waste, considering that we only get around 30 chapters a year. I think that's a fair enough opinion. And this is also a very common feeling that I always see happen at the start of every arc, which we kind of forget about. The first few chapters of every arc is about establishing the new location and generally having fun and exploring the atmosphere instead of plowing forward with the story, which is very important because if we don't get these sorts of chapters, then everything's going to feel extremely rushed, and it becomes a question of what's even the point of being here. If Oda isn't allowed to draw all of his whimsical things, then he doesn't have a lot of reason to continue making One Piece. So these sorts of chapters may not be a hit with a certain part of the One Piece fanbase, but these are Oda's reason for existing. He's at his happiest when he can just let go and draw weird things for the sake of it. But I want to emphasize that this is the exact same sentiment as when Wano started. There was big disappointment from what I think is a very vocal minority minority of the fan base. But there was a sense that we were finally on Wano and well, nothing was happening because we were spending chapters exploring the island and meeting characters like Hold'em and Urashima. People were just so keen to get to the meat of the arc that they felt a bit let down by those early chapters. And even recently, the same thing happened on Egghead Island. And the same was true of Whole Cake Island and Dressrosa as well. As much as I love these chapters because it feels great to be just messing around with the crew for a bit, I do sympathize because the annual chapter production is decreasing year after year. I think it was much easier to appreciate these arc openings back in the days of Dressrosa, Whole Cake Island, and Wano because we had more chapters per year back then. So if you weren't vibing with them that week, it's fine because we'll be moving on soon enough. But I think the increased amount and the increased length of breaks have made One Piece feel like a very scarce resource that fans want to maximize as much as possible every week because there is always a break waiting around the corner. This goes back to me always describing One Piece as being like a drug. It is a story so good that people do genuinely get addicted. So there's that existing itch that's being scratched less and less. And I myself had a bit of trouble getting into the chapter this week. However, that's more because Hunter x Hunter has returned to Weekly Shonen Jump this week and did drop an incredible bombshell of a chapter to kick things off, which you can check out on my second channel, New Old Review, which also has a full 2-hour recap of all of the Dark Continent and Succession Contest events for Hunter x Hunter. There's very exciting stuff happening, and you can check it all out through the link in the description. And that's also where you can check out our sponsor Fume, who allows us to bring you the best fictional pirate content possible as often as possible. Definitely check them out, and I will see you in the next video it is that I make.